Part 6. The time had come for closing the case. The judge commanded the accused to rise and put the usual question: "Have you anything to add to your defense?" The man standing and twirling his hands a hideous cat, which he had, seemed not to hear. The judge repeated the question. This time the man heard and appeared to comprehend. He started like one awaking from sleep, cast his eyes around him, looked at the spectators, the gendarme, his counsel, the jurors, and the court, placed his huge fists on the bar before him, looked around, and suddenly fixing his eyes upon the prosecuting attorney, began to speak. It was like an eruption. It seemed from the manner in which the words escaped his lips, incoherent, impetuous, jostling each other pell-mell, as if they were all eager to find a vent at the same time. He said, "I have this to say, that I've been a wheelwright at Paris. That was at Monsieur Beloup's too. It's a hard life to be a wheelwright. You always work outdoors, in yards, under sheds when you have good bosses. Never in shops, because you must have room, you see. In the winter it's so cold that you thresh your arms to warm them. But the bosses won't allow that. They say it's a waste of time. It's tough work to handle iron when there's ice on the pavements. It wears a man out quick. You get old when you were young at this trade. A man is used up by 40. I was 53. I was sick a good deal, and then the workmen are so bad. When a poor fellow isn't young, they always call you old bird and old beast. I only earned 30 sous a day. They paid me as little as they could. The bosses took advantage of my age. Then I had my daughter, who was a washerwoman at the river. She earned a little for herself. Between us two, we got on. She had her work too, all day long, up to the waist, in tub, in rain, in snow, with the wind that cuts your face when it freezes. It's all the same. The washing must be done. There are folks who haven't much linen and are waiting for it. If you don't wash, you'll lose your customers. The blanks are not well matched, and the water falls on you everywhere. You get your clothes wet through and through. That strikes in. She would come home at 7 o'clock at night and go to bed right away. She was so tired. Her husband used to beat her. She's dead. She wasn't very happy. She was a good girl. She never went at balls and was very quiet. I remember one Shrove Tuesday she went to bed at 8 o'clock. Look here, I'm telling the truth. You only have to ask if it isn't so. Ask how stupid I am. Paris is a gulf. Who is there that knows Father Champmathieu? But there is Monsieur Beloop. Go ask Monsieur Beloop. I don't know what you want more of me." The man ceased speaking, but did not sit down. He had uttered these sentences in a loud, rapid, hoarse, harsh, and guttural tone, with a sort of angry and savage simplicity. Once he stopped to bow to somebody in the crowd. The sort of affirmations which he seemed to fling out haphazard came from him like hiccups, and he added to each the gesture of a man chopping wood. When he had finished, the auditory burst into laughter. He looked at them, and seeing them laughing and not knowing why, began to laugh himself. That was sinister. The judge, a considerate and kindly man, raised his voice. He reminded the gentlemen of the jury that Monsieur Balloon, the former master wheelwright by whom the prisoner had said he had been employed, had been summoned but had not appeared. He had become bankrupt and could not be found. Then, turning to the accused, he adjured him to listen to what he was about to say, and added, "You are in a position which demands reflection. The gravest presumptions are weighing against you, and may lead to fatal results. Prisoner, on your own behalf, I question you a second time. Explain yourself clearly on these 2 points. First, did you or did you not climb the wall of Pierron Close, break off the branch and steal the apples? That is to say, commit the crime of theft, with the addition of breaking into an enclosure. Secondly, are you or are you not the discharged convict Jean Valjean?" The prisoner shook his head, with a knowing look, like a man who understands perfectly and knows what he is going to say. He opened his mouth, turned toward the presiding judge, and said, "In the first place—" Then he looked at his cap, looked up at the ceiling, and was silent. "Prisoner," resumed the prosecuting attorney in an austere tone, "give attention. You have replied to nothing that has been asked you. Your agitation commends you." The accused had at last resumed his seat. He arose abruptly, when the prosecuting attorney had ended, and exclaimed, "You are a very bad man, you. I mean, this is what I wanted to say. I couldn't think of it first off. I never stole anything. I'm a man who doesn't get something to eat every day. I was coming from there, walking home, after a shower, which had made the ground all yellow with mud, so that the ponds were running over, and you only saw little sprigs of grass sticking out of the sand along the road. And I found a broken branch on the ground with apples on it. I picked it up, not knowing what trouble it would give me. It's 3 months that I've been in prison, being knocked about. More than that, I can tell. You talk against me and tell me answer. The gendarme, who's a good fellow, nudges my elbow and whispers answer now. I can't explain myself. I never studied. I'm a poor man. You're wrong not to see that I didn't steal. I picked up off the ground things that was there. You talk about Jean Valjean. I don't know any such people. I've worked for Monsieur Baloup, Boulevard de l'Hôpital. My name is Champmathieu. You must be very sharp to tell me where I was born. I don't know myself. Everybody can't have houses to be born in. That would be too handy. I think my father and mother were strollers, but I don't know. When I was a child, they called me Little One. Now they call me Old Man. They're my Christian names. Take them as you like. I've been in Auvergne. I've been at Faverolles. Bless me. Can't a man have been in Auvergne and Faverolles without having been at the galleys? I tell you I never stole, and that I'm Father Champmathieu. I've been at Monsieur Baloup's. I've lived in his house. I'm tired of your everlasting nonsense. What is everybody after me like for a mad dog? The prosecuting attorney was still standing. He addressed the judge. Sir, in the presence of the confused but very adroit delegations of the accused, who endeavours to pass for an idiot, but who will not succeed in it, we will prevent him. We request that it may please you in the court to call again, within the bar, the convicts Brevet, Cochepaille, and Chenildieu, and the police inspector Javert, and to submit them to a final interrogation concerning the identity of the accused with the convict Jean Valjean. I must remind the prosecuting attorney, said the presiding judge, that Police Inspector Javert, recalled by his duties to the chief town of a neighbouring district, left the hall, and the city also as soon as his testimony was taken. We granted him this permission with the consent of the prosecuting attorney and the counsel of the accused. True, replied the prosecuting attorney. In the absence of Monsieur Javert, I think it a duty to recall to the gentlemen of the jury what he said here a few hours ago. Javert is an estimable man, who does honour to inferior but important functions by his rigorous and strict probity. These are the terms in which he testified. I do not need even moral presumptions and material proofs to contradict the denials of the accused. I recognize him perfectly. That man's name is not Champmathieu. He is a convict Jean Valjean, very hard and much feared. I often saw him when I was adjutant of the galley guard at Toulon. I repeat it, I recognize him perfectly. This declaration, in terms so precise, appeared to produce a strong impression upon the public and jury. The prosecuting attorney concluded by insisting that, in the absence of Javert, the three witnesses, Brevet, Chenildieu, and Cochepaille, should be heard anew and solemnly interrogated. The judge gave an order to an officer, and a moment afterward the door of the witness room opened, and the officer, accompanied by a gendarme ready to lend assistance, led in the convict Brevet. The audience was in breathless suspense, and all hands palpitated, as if they contained but a single soul. The old convict Brevet was clad in black and grey, jacket of the central prisons. Brevet was about 60 years old. He had the face of a man of business, and the air of a rogue. They sometimes go together. He had become something like a turnkey in the prison, to which he had been brought by new misdeeds. He was one of those men whom think their superiors are wont to say, he tries to make himself useful. The chaplain bore good testimony to his religious habits. It must not be forgotten that this happened under the Restoration. Brevet, said the judge, you have suffered infamous punishment and cannot take an oath. Brevet cast down his eyes. Nevertheless, continued the judge, even in the man whom the law has degraded, there may remain, if divine justice permit, a sentiment of honour and equity. The moment is a solemn one, and there is still time to retract if you think yourself mistaken. Prisoner, rise. Brevet, look well upon the prisoner, collect your remembrances, and say on your soul and conscience whether you still recognize this man as your former comrade in the galleys, Jean Valjean. Brevet looked at the prisoner, then turned again to the court. Yes, your honour, I was the first to recognise him, and I still do so. This man is Jean Valjean, who came to Toulon in 1796 and left in 1815. I left a year after. He looks like a brute now, but he must have grown stupid with age. At the galleys he was sullen. I recognise him now, positively. Sit down, said the judge. Prisoner remains standing. Chenildieu was brought in, a convict for life, as shown by his red cloak and green cap. He was undergoing his punishment in the galleys of Toulon, whence he had been brought for this occasion. He was a little man, about 50 years old, active, wrinkled, lean, yellow, brazen, restless, with a sort of sickly feebleness in his limbs and whole person, immense force in his eye. His companions in the galleys had nicknamed him Chenildieu. The judge addressed nearly the same words to him as to Brevet. When he reminded him that his infamy had deprived him of the right to take an oath, Chenildieu raised his head and looked the spectators in the face. The judge requested him to gather his thoughts and asked him, as he had Brevet, whether he still recognized the prisoner. Chenildieu burst out laughing. Gad, do I recognize him? We were 5 years on the same chain. You're sulky with me, are you, old boy? Sit down, said the judge. The officer brought in Cochepaille, this other convict for life, brought from the galleys and dressed in red like Chenildieu, was a peasant from Lourdes, and a semi-bear of the Pyrenees. He tended flocks in the mountains, and from shepherd had glided into brigandage. Cochepaille was not less uncouth than the accused, and appeared still more stupid. He was one of those unfortunate men whom nature turns out as wild beasts, and society finishes up into galley slaves. The judge attempted to move him by a few serious and pathetic words, and asked him, as he had the others, whether he still recognized, without hesitation or difficulty, the man standing before him. "It is John Valjean," said Cochepaille. "The same they called John the Jack. He was so strong." Each of the affirmations of these three men, evidently sincere and in good faith, had excited in the audience a murmur of evil augury for the accused, a murmur which increased in force and continuance every time a new declaration was added to the preceding one. The prisoner himself listened to them with that astonished countenance which, according to the prosecution, was his principal means of defence. At first the gendarme, by his side, heard him mutter between his teeth, "Ah, well, there is one of them." After the second, he said in a louder tone, with an air of almost satisfaction, "Good." At the third, he exclaimed, "Famous." The judge addressed him. "Prisoner, you have listened. What have you to say?" He replied, "I say famous." A buzz ran through the crowd, and almost invaded the jury. It was evident the man was lost. "Officers," said the judge, "enforce order. I'm about to sum up the case." At this moment, there was a movement near the judge. A voice was heard exclaiming, "Brevet! Chenildieu! Cochepaille! Look this way!" So lamentable and terrible was this voice, that those who heard it felt their blood run cold. All eyes turned toward the spot whence it came. A man who had been sitting among the privileged spectators behind the court had risen, pushed open the low door which separated the tribunal from the bar, and was standing in the centre of the hall. The judge, the prosecuting attorney, Monsieur Mabatebois, 20 persons recognized him, and exclaimed at once, "Monsieur Madeleine!"